Okay, welcome back to Scouching's 2022 NHL Draft Recaps. Today we are looking at the Arizona Coyotes. Similar to the Anaheim Ducks, the Arizona Coyotes might be the team this year that cemented this is what our team is going to look like. The Arizona Coyotes sent a message to the world in the draft this year that this is the team we want. When they went out and got Nick Ritchie during the season, Nick Ritchie is the type of player they want. They went out and they got Zach Kassian and traded up. You can kind of see what this team is trying to be. But first pick they had was Logan Cooley at 3. Now, some people I think were surprised to see Logan Cooley go ahead of Shane Wright. And I said this before the draft. If you made me pick between one or the other, I could go either way. And I can totally understand if Arizona had this long built-up relationship with him over the course of the year, you know, and really felt that there was a personal relationship there and they didn't think that Shane Wright was even going to be available at 3 or something like that. And their eggs were sort of in the Cooley basket rather than the Wright basket. It would be pretty bad to then double back on that and go with Shane Wright just because he's there. But I think Cooley's the right pick. He's dynamic, he's fun, he's skilled, he's creative. One of the most fun players in the draft to watch and very easily could have been my number 1 on my board. And then they traded a lot to get Conor Geeky at 11. Like the amount of damage they could have done with the picks that San Jose kept. And this is going to be a theme for Arizona is who they could have had instead of trading all this stuff for Conor Geeky, right? Like they trade up they gave up 27, so they could have had, I don't know, Brad Lambert. Then they also added 34. They could have had Jagger Firkus and 45, and they all traded that to San Jose. They could have had Seamus Casey, Gleb Trikazov. Like the idea of Brad Lambert, Gleb Trikazov, and Jagger Firkus or Seamus Casey all being Arizona Coyotes instead of just Conor Geeky, to me is pretty clear. Like that's a pretty clear decision. But again, this is what Arizona wants to be. Big, intense, maybe not flashy and offensive, but tough to beat, physical, and resilient. And I think that's what Conor Geeky is. I think his offensive game might struggle to project a little bit, but I do think there's something to like with Geeky, but drafting him at 11 is really high, and when they had all this draft capital and then used it to trade up that high, I don't know. We'll see how it goes for them, but it's a sketchy call in my opinion. And then at 29, after taking on Zach Kassian to trade up a few spots, they picked Maverick Lamarou. I mean, look, he's big, but of all of the players that I tracked this year and of all of the players that I thought could go top 2 rounds, Lamarou was the one that I felt had the furthest to go before he hits that first round upside if it's there. He can shoot, he's mobile for a guy his size, but that really is about it. He tries to play physical, but he does not have the strength to do it yet. He gets beat wide with his feet a lot. Not a particularly good puck mover. Like I'll show you the data I tracked of his because it just across the board, it was not ideal. So you're looking at a guy who did not do very well in his own end, and this is out of 50 track defensemen. He did not do very well moving pucks up the ice. He did worse keeping them out of his own end. He was much worse exiting the offensive zone than entering the defensive zone, which I guess is a positive. I don't know. He's a really, really mixed bag, and there's a long way to go, I think, for Lamarou to be a top round player. Could it work out? Sure, I think it could work, but I'm not holding my breath, to be perfectly honest. There's a lot of guys, I think, like Lamarou that have come and gone over the years, and it's a long way to go, I think, for him to get to high-end NHL ability. And at 36, they drafted Lamarou Duda. I mean, look, again, I watched a lot of Krasnaya Armia this year. If you told me a week before the draft that Vladimir Gradinin was going to go 120 picks after Lamarou Duda, I would have thought you were lying to me. I did not see that big of a gap between these players, if there even was one, and if anything, I would expect it to be flipped around. Duda is a decently skilled player, but he always struck me as a CHL-style defenseman playing in the MHL, and when you do that, you stick out a lot. I just don't think that there's a ton of real upside there with Duda. He played a lot on the power play when Gradinin probably should have been playing on the power play, in my view. I don't know. I see a lot of work to do with Duda because I don't know really what the trademark of his game is, and I don't really know what his weaknesses are because he's kind of all around fine in the MHL, and he just produced a lot on the power play. So we'll see what happens with Duda, but at 36, there were a lot of players I would have taken ahead of him. Julian Lutz at 43, though, was, I thought, one of their best picks of the draft outside of Logan Cooley. I mean, he's ranked 48th on my board, but, you know, if you want this sort of physical power game out of your players, then he's a good option. He is a relatively quick and pretty skilled guy. I think there's upside in his game. And in that range, I don't really have much negative things to say about it. At 43, it's a good pick. I think he'll be a player, maybe in your bottom 6, third line power winger guy. I liked Lutz whenever I saw him in Munich, and I tracked a few games of his after he came back from injury, and he played pretty well. Mikko Matika at 67, again, I think it's pretty high, but he's big, he can shoot. I don't know. I watched him, and the data he put up was very much an outlier, and I did not buy it. Older for this draft class for a first-time eligible, didn't produce tremendously well, mostly because I just felt that his pace was low, his skill level was relatively low, but he got the chances he got because he just knew what to do. Shovel pucks into the middle of the ice, find open space, get your shot attempts from dangerous space, and don't waste your time. I think that's a lot of what he did, and when it came time to sort of quarterbacking and running play around the ice, he kind of wasn't as effective. Jeremy Langlois at 94, I mean, if you want sort of like the Denton Matejchuk of the QMJHL, you could get Jeremy Langlois. He can really shoot it. He's got some skill. That pre-shot skill's pretty good. I would have much rather had Christian Kyrou, but he wasn't available at 94. Langlois, just, I don't know. I watched him play. His mobility is an issue. His defensive game wasn't really great. And I just feel like there's a bit of a ways to go to make it work. But he could be an offensive guy that can maybe fill in on a secondary power play down the road one day. I don't know. You're going to send him back for at least one more year, maybe an overage year after that, and then come to the AHL if they sign him. But Langlois is going to be an interesting one because he did produce extremely well, was not ranked very often, and I didn't rank him, but he was on my watch list for a while because of the offensive tools. So not the end of the world there. Matthew Morden at 131. You know, I had a Canadian high school guy ranked in Regito Hamano, and I didn't think he was going to get drafted. Matthew Morden, I saw play at the under 18s. I thought, okay, this is when he impresses me, and this is when I see what I haven't been able to see in this guy before. I don't really see much with Matthew Morden. He's big, and he has some skill. He's wiry, but I don't know what they're hoping to get out of him. Maximilian Zuber at 163, though, I hadn't seen him ever, but I went back and watched him on the train ride back from Montreal. And I honestly, he might be one of the more interesting picks they made this year. I don't think he's going to be a guy that plays huge minutes in the NHL if he ever plays in the NHL. I think his offensive tools are somewhat limited, but he drove really good shot differentials on a really good team. You know, he's a good defense first guy, makes a decent first pass. You know, he can play with more skilled guys on his pair. I think that if you get a guy who eats minutes at 163 in the NHL, even if it's a bottom pair guy who can kill penalties, that's a win, and maybe that's what they've landed with Zuber after watching him this year, or watching him after the draft. But 204, honestly, one of my favorite picks of the entire draft. I put that in McKean's Hockey after the draft as one of my personal favorites of the draft, and that was Adam Zlinka. This guy outscored the crap out of guys like Adam Sikora on the Slovakian junior team last year. 2 years ago now, not this past season, the year before. Came to Sioux Falls, had a bit of a rough first couple of games. I felt he was getting better as the time went on because I did have him in my system to sort of keep an eye on after watching him preseason and at the Hlinka. But boy, he blew out his knee, and he only recently has just started playing again. But similar to last year when the Arizona Coyotes hand the keys over to whoever it is running the 7th round, like whoever's taking the flyers on these guys, they did it. Sam Lipkin last year, he had a breakout year this year. I could see Adam Zlinka having another really good season this year. Not that last season was incredible because he only played like 10 games, but I think he could have a really good year and maybe be on that Slovakian junior team and be a bit player there in the middle of the lineup. I really like Adam Zlinka and think there's a lot of potential there for that. And I thought he was a great swing at 204, and I think worse players went off the board. So yeah, for the Arizona Coyotes, that does it. I'm going to give them a 2F. So they're going to be at the bottom of the leaderboard for now, but only because of the stuff they spent to get the guys they got. It is a risky strategy. Maverick Lamarou is absolutely very risky at 29, I think. Conor Geeky at 11, considering the types of picks they traded away, like even San Jose taking Philip Beested, I think there's lots of universes where Philip Bistad turns out as a third-line NHL center, and so does Conor Geeky. And I think that's pretty clear from right now, from right this second. We'll see how it all works out, but Logan Cooley by default, as long as they give him players to play with who can finish with him, he's gonna be a rock star. I think he's an awesome hockey player. Adam Zlinka is a great late round swing. I mean, maybe there's a finisher for Logan Cooley and Mikko Matika. Who knows? Julian Lutz could be a nice power winger one day. Like, they've got some nice pieces. They just spent a lot to get them. So we'll see how it works out for Arizona. But if you want to know what the Arizona Coyotes think their team is going to look like in the next little while and how they want to play, this draft class is exactly what I think they're trying to get at. So a 2F. Some bright spots, some questionable ones, but an interesting crop, to say the least, for the Arizona Coyotes. The next one will be tomorrow on the Ottawa Senators, which, again, got to use my words carefully and pick my words very carefully, but I love you, Sens fans, and we'll see you then. So thank you very much for watching.